Hey there, welcome back to The Outright Effect, a podcast in which unique perspectives challenge us to be better versions of ourselves. I'm Tempsy.
And I'm Shelly.
And today we're talking about the wedding planning process. Shelly and I both had decent-sized weddings, and we just kind of wanted to reflect back on some things that maybe were a little bit stressful, some maybe items that we splurged a little on at our weddings, and just the overall process, how we worked with vendors and wedding coordinators, and also wanted to talk a little bit about some weddings we've been to lately that might have had some different ideas and fun stuff to kind of experience for the guests. So I think that's kind of where we want to go today.
Yeah. All right, Tempsy. So how did your wedding planning process go? Did you feel like it was stressful? Did you feel like you had an easy time making decisions? Or how did you feel about it?
Honestly, I wasn't one of those girls who dreamt about their wedding their entire lives, or I honestly didn't even think I was going to get married. So it's not like I had a whole lot of pressure on myself or anybody else to have an amazing wedding. That's just not something that was in my brain. So I do think that relieved a lot of pressure for me compared to most people. And so I didn't feel that stress in the beginning. When things started to get a little bit closer, it definitely got a little more stressful. But for me, it was more about getting on Pinterest and looking at things that I wanted the aesthetic to be, and just making sure that I was able to execute on those things. But I started far enough in advance and kind of planned things out methodically so that I didn't have to rush at the end. But there's always, I feel like, a rush towards, as you get closer to the date. So it eventually did get stressful, but I don't think throughout the process it got super stressful. What about you? Do you feel that way?
So for me, I would actually say that I was pretty stress-free for the most part of my planning. I would say that generally speaking, I make decisions pretty quickly. I know what I like and I know what I don't like. I think the thing that made me a little bit scared is I don't like a lot of things. So
Okay.
then I got worried about being able to find things I actually liked.
Sure.
And also, I am not a very girly person. No frilly things, no pink or anything like that. That was a very clear thing that I told my the florist that I used for my wedding. Absolutely no pink. So in those cases, I feel like I was a little bit worried, but I didn't let it really get to me because I know that there's so many options out there that I would probably be able to find something that I liked. So I think that is kind of two ends of the spectrum there, right? I know that a lot of people out there get worried because of so many options, but I think in my case, I was relieved that there would be other options than, frilly, puffy pink things.
But I don't really see you as a stressed person in general. You don't really come off as stressed even if you are. So I don't know if you internalize that or not, but you're not really a stressed out person.
Yeah, I don't feel like I was stressed out at all. I feel like when I saw it, I knew I liked it and I made a quick decision. There were not really many things that I was going back and forth on for a long period of time. Honestly, there's nothing that I can remember that I couldn't make up my mind up. I also think there was a aspect of accepting that there were going to be decisions to be made from the get-go so that when things start to come up or when you come to that point, you kind of already know that something was going to come up anyway. So you're kind of like, all right, this is what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to move on with my life, right?
Yep, exactly. For me too, one thing I wanted to mention is, it wasn't super stressful leading up the planning process. The day of and probably the week and a half leading up to that was extremely stressful for me. I would have preferred to get married. I was living in Vegas when we got engaged. We came to Hawaii, my first time to Hawaii. That's how we got engaged. When we went back, I was like, I don't want a big wedding. I'd rather go to the chapel. I don't even care if Elvis marries us. I just don't want a big to-do. We just maybe our parents and our siblings and maybe one friend each, our closest friend, and that would have been perfect for me. But, families want to,
Be there
celebrate,
for you.
yeah, and enjoy a party. So we ended up doing it more kind of for the family.
And I think that maybe, now thinking what might have been stressful to me, I think initially because I'd never planned a wedding before. I was maybe a bridesmaid or helped a friend with planning weddings or, went with friends to try on dresses, that kind of stuff. But I think the most stressful thing was like figuring out how much did things cost, because there was no frame of reference that I had. Right. So it's like, all I knew is like weddings are expensive. Well, what does that mean? Expensive could be a lot of things to a lot of people. It could be $1,000. It could be $10,000. It could be more than that. I don't know. And I didn't know what I was going to be getting into, or like how that was even going to turn out. So I think if anything, if I had to say what was stressful, I think that was probably the most stressful thing, only because I couldn't like, imagine it, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
That makes sense. So what about a coordinator? Did you decide to hire a coordinator?
I did hire a coordinator, and it's so funny because, like I had mentioned, I'd been a bridesmaid, kind of helped some friends. Going through that process, I went into it thinking, I don't need a coordinator. Look at all this stuff that I help my friends with or whatever. It didn't seem that crazy. But, I did end up hiring a coordinator anyway. I think it was more of like a mutual decision to hire a coordinator. Like it wasn't my idea, I guess I'll say, but I had heard from other people who had hired coordinators that it would really help them. So I thought like, hey, I'll just look into this. I'll interview them. I'll see what they actually do before I make a judgment on anything or, a decision. And I'll be honest, and I will say that I think the hardest part about hiring a coordinator or not is not, also, again, myself not being fully familiar with what exactly a coordinator does and how involved they are. And something I honestly was surprised with is that you have to sign off on all these contracts with your vendors, like almost like legally binding things that they're going to provide your service because of X, Y, and Z and whatnot, and all these cancellation dates and that kind of stuff. And those things didn't make sense to me. I'll say that I wish my coordinator was more involved during that process. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know I had to do that, number one. I didn't know contracts were involved. But then reading all these contracts, I think with just the work that I do on a daily basis, and reading contracts is actually serious business. Then I got kind of scared to like sign these things because here I am, like I'm not a lawyer or anything like that, and here I have to read contracts, but I didn't have anyone to help me go through those contracts and say if it sounded good or not, or is this what usually is in a contract. Like those are things that are totally foreign to me.
So does that mean you hired your coordinator a little bit later in the game then?
No, so I hired my coordinator from the get-go, but I guess my perception is not all coordinators will actually review your contract to that level of detail. They might, make note of cancellation dates and deposits that you might not be able to get full refunds for and that kind of stuff. But there are just some other things in contracts that I was just not super comfortable with. At the end of the day, like in my mind, I'm like, a contract is a contract. That's like pretty serious.
Yeah.
So my coordinator didn't really get involved with that stuff. But
there's different levels too, right? You can do just a day of coordinator.
Right. So I actually did almost like full planning. So she did the day of, but she did even more than that. So I would say through me interviewing coordinators, there are like 3 main levels. One was just a day of, where you're just like, a couple months before your wedding, you're like spitting out all this information at them, and they're like just knowing like what's happening at what time, who needs to be where. The middle level is kind of like where you on your own, like they might give you some suggestions on vendors you might want to look at, but they won't plan your wedding 100% for you on your behalf. Like, you are the person who has the ultimate say.
Gotcha.
And then, obviously the full-on planning is you have to do nothing and they do everything for you. So that's not what I did. I kind of did the middle one.
But you don't lose control in that situation.
No, I think you ultimately get to say like, I like this or not, but they do all the legwork for you. They're doing like the interviews with the vendors and that kind of stuff. And I think you probably just tell them your budget, but nowhere in there did I know this contract thing was going to come up. So that's the only thing I would like, throw out as a caution to somebody who's going into it and being like, oh my God, these contract things, who's going to read this? You are probably, Yeah.
Well, I guess you can imagine what my answer is to this question. So, I had originally wanted to just get married in a chapel in Vegas. So when it came to having this big, event, I figured I could do it as long as I plan, well enough in advance, and I make sure I hit milestones along the way. I'll be fine. But I did not think about the day of. Like it just didn't even cross my mind the day of. So the very last minute, I asked my sister-in-law, can you just take control of the whole ceremony piece? Because I didn't even think about who should be going in what order. So I just had to ask her, like, can you just send them down in the best order possible? Like, I don't know what that is, but like she's been to weddings before, so I figured she knows, and she's a smart person. So I'm just like, you got it, girl. However, I just know that I need to be
I'm okay
last
with
with my dad. That's it. So I did not hire a coordinator, but, and they're expensive, to be candid, right?
They are,
like
yeah.
they're extremely
kind of expensive.
Yeah.
It depends who you go with, honestly. There are some that are like way more expensive than others. Obviously, that's not the one
and
that
the
I
level
hired.
you choose.
And the level
Right.
that you choose. Right.
Yeah. So I think some of the ones that I was looking at were like $5,000, and I was like, that's a lot of money. I'm not in the, I'm not in the business of spending that much money on a coordinator, but I think there is something worth having somebody on the day to kind of just help navigate what happens during that time.
Yeah. And I want to say probably $5,000 is probably like the middle going rate
Is it?
for a coordinator.
Okay. I mean,
In case anyone out there is wondering.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're getting married like 20 years from now, that will probably be different. But if you're getting married anytime soon, I believe that is around the going rate for a coordinator.
I think one other important point I'd like to make about coordinators that I would have really enjoyed is, and I think my sister-in-law helped me with this too, was coordinating with all of the vendors while you're getting ready. Like, that's not something that you necessarily want to do. So what I did instead was I handed the phone to my sister. She was one of my bridesmaids. And I said, hey, this is all you. Here's my password. Anybody calls, texts, you respond. Only ask me questions that I need to answer or that you don't know the answer to. Otherwise, you got this. Like, just take my phone, take the
I
wheel,
trust you.
sister. Like, I just don't want to have to worry about that because it'll
Yeah.
just stress you out.
Yeah. Something I will mention though about having a coordinator, and they won't tell you this like after your wedding's done either, because they don't want you to be like mad or upset about anything that might have gone down. But some of the things that they may, look out for you is like if you had any food allergies or dietary restrictions, like obviously they would make sure like wherever your food is coming from, that those items that you can't eat are not on your plate. Or if you went to a florist and you ordered certain types of flowers and you're very specific about it, they would make sure that the florist was delivering on those things, like bringing you the actual things that you ordered on the day of, so that, you're getting your hair done or whatever, getting dressed, and these people are running around doing stuff for you. So one thing that they did help me with is that when I was taking pictures, I was holding my bouquet, and I guess a flower had come loose and it fell out of my bouquet during photos. So they grabbed my bouquet for me. The florist was still there. They went over there, had them swap up some flowers, and like made it all good again. So nothing was like hanging out or anything, and there was no gaping hole in my flowers. So that's something that they did help me with. And basically it was a good, coincidentally, a good block of time where that happened, because I had to walk from one place to another. The pictures were done, so they could swap it out during that time. And then by the time I got to my ceremony, had good flowers again. So
Nice.
it worked out.
That something similar happened to me. The flowers for everybody's hair, they hadn't brought those.
Oh,
It was in my contract, but I think, it's probably something really easy to overlook. So those flowers that I was supposed to have in my hair, and then my bridesmaids were supposed to have, and I only had 2. So it wasn't like a huge deal. They just drove back, got some, and brought it back to us. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But I think I actually talked to them about that. Like, hey, I was supposed to have these, and I don't see them in your deliveries. And luckily my florist also provided all of these like wine barrels and wine boxes to go down my aisle that weren't originally in my contract. I just saw them in somebody else's pictures that used the same vendor, and I asked if they could bring those too, and they did, like, free of charge. They didn't charge me extra, so it was really nice. Like, this florist was amazing. But that was the only thing that it would have been nice if the coordinator could have handled that
stepped
for
in,
me.
right?
Yeah. But what was the hardest thing about planning for you in general?
For me, kind of like how I mentioned the budget part, I think that was ultimately the hardest thing for me, only because, like we were saying, I didn't have a frame of reference. I couldn't figure out the math in my head. So really all I went off of was how much money do I have saved, and how much money do I think I can save over the course of the next year and a half so that I could pay for what I need. And that's essentially the number that I was going off of to plan my wedding. Here in Hawaii, there used to be some free wedding workshops I don't know if they do those anymore, but
Oh,
I did go to
really?
some of those. Yeah, I don't know if they do them anymore.
Those were great. I went to those too. They were
they're really
amazing.
good. I would say they covered like pretty much every topic, right? Like
Yep.
several different sessions going over like music and DJ to like hair and makeup.
And they always
and
had, like,
cakes
those
and-
vendors there,
Right, vendors
right?
there. So if you were shopping around, you could talk to them, learn about something, you know, even photographers, videographers, they had like everything there. And these, like, it was a different topic per each workshop. So it wasn't super overwhelming. They really broke it down for you. But the second thing that I used was the knot.com, which is what really helped me once I figured out that total dollar amount that I could spend. Basically, I remember, and maybe they changed it at this point, I don't know. I mean, it's been a couple of years, but I could just drop in the total number and it would break down for me how much I quote unquote should be spending on these different things. So to help me stay on budget, right?
That's cool.
So instead of me being like, oh, I'm thinking that I can have like a, I don't know, spend X amount of dollars for my wedding and I'm going to spend $5,000 on my flowers. It's like, no, you can only spend like 1,000, you know, like it would kind of give you those guidelines. And that's something that I thought was really helpful.
That's a good resource because I
is. Mm-hmm.
didn't use that, and I think we went 5,000 over budget. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Which, you know, I didn't spend that much on my wedding. I think at the end of the day, it ended up being 30,000, but I wish it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, I wish we would have stayed at the 25,000 mark, but I think if I had that tool, I probably would have.
Right. Then at least you know how much you could potentially be spending on other things. And then if you're like, I'm not even going to spend that much money, this is a really high amount, you can move that to somewhere else and spend it elsewhere or
Right.
save it. Right. So something that I thought was really cool though at those free workshops I was talking about is that I won some free macarons.
That's right.
I think I won like 250 of them or something. Yeah, I think it was like 250. It was a lot. And I didn't use it for my wedding,
Why?
but I used it for other things.
Oh, okay.
So I had used it for, I think, like my bridal shower or something like that. And then I think I had to go to like a potluck one day and my responsibility was like to bring dessert. So I just
Oh.
went and I picked up like 30 and I could use that amount in increments.
Oh,
I could break it up.
nice.
So I still have like 20 left or something.
Wow.
It's on a little card somewhere at my
Yeah,
house.
that's awesome. And that's funny. We didn't even touch on the fact that I couldn't even go to your wedding.
Oh yeah, Tempsy was supposed to be my bridesmaid. But she was going to be having a baby around the time of my wedding. So she did not attend.
I had a baby 4 days before your wedding. So it wasn't in the cards. We were trying to think like, well, maybe.
How could this work? Yeah. I was
Shelly
like,
texted me, hey, should I just reserve a seat for you just in case? And I'm like, I don't know. 'Cause it could be expensive, you know, like your final count and stuff like
Well,
that.
also, I mean, you could also be in the hospital room. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. So, and I was in the hospital. So, but anyway, it didn't work out. But I was so sad too. But I was happy to see all your pictures and videos and stuff. It was really nice. But for me, the hardest part I think was I didn't realize that my husband would be so like readily involved in everything. You know, we always think about guys just kind of like, yeah, you plan it, you decide. But I was happy my husband wanted to say in things because it meant I wasn't on my own completely, right? And so, but there were some things where he had very strong opinions about things and I had strong opinions the other way. But we worked them out. They weren't like deal breakers,
Yeah.
you know. This is a wedding. Your relationship's way more important
Right.
than any decision that you make about your wedding. So it didn't turn into anything huge, but it was a little bit hard to kind of navigate that because even though I never dreamed of a wedding, there was still, you know, an aesthetic that I wanted to have out there and want people to have a good time and feel what we were trying to do in terms of a good,
right.
you know,
You wanted to
enjoyable party.
represent yourself too.
Sure,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think another thing was kind of the parental involvement, if that makes sense. Like, you know, you have people coming in from the mainland, you have people that are already here that are heavily involved on a day-to-day. Like my family's in the mainland. My mom didn't get to be part of the entire process step by step, right? But I wanted to, you know, make sure she felt involved, make sure that anybody else on the mainland felt that they were a big part of this as well. My best friends on the mainland, and I wanted to make sure they felt like they were a part of this entire process, but it was kind of hard. So I knew they were traveling and things like that. So I wanted to make sure I paid for all that for them. Not the travel part. I couldn't pay for the travel part, but I paid for all their dresses and everything like that and made sure that they were taken care of when they got here so that they wouldn't have to stress too much about the money
Yeah.
part. In the mainland, most people, they pay for their own bridesmaid dresses and stuff. But I think here the tradition is more that you pay for your...
Right. So usually here I would say if a bride can cover the cost, if she can. I mean, I don't think we should be like completely outrageous and expect everybody to be buying things for us, right?
Right.
But I think as much as a bride can, she will, and if she can cover the whole cost, then she will.
Right.
Yeah.
So I heard that through my planning process, and it's not that I just wanted to assimilate to that tradition, but I felt like they were already paying to come here, that it would be nice for me to just provide that to them. So, but getting family over here, having family here, and then kind of entertaining them while they're here. We went to Lanikai and had a nice day with the entire family, and so that was really nice. But it's still stressful because you're still in the last moments of planning your wedding,
right? You haven't reached the finish line yet.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was hard, but it was also so nice to have so many people here, rallying for me and coming so far to be here for my wedding. That was beautiful, and I loved it. It was really nice. But yeah, family, it can be hard with family, and some of the things that they prefer, their preferences that they have, can definitely be a little bit taxing.
Sure, it can be exhausting. You're just out a lot. There's a lot of you're going around here, there, and everywhere. Plus, thinking about what you have to do over the next couple of days.
Yeah.
And so, mentally and physically exhausting. So, Tempsy, when you were planning your wedding, did you have a splurge item in particular?
I did, but it wasn't like I planned it that I was going to spend a whole bunch of money on this one thing. But what I did know was that I really wanted a kind of like a streamlined, or not plain, but what's another word for plain? Like a simple dress, simple-ish. And I wanted to have a sash. So just like, not a belt, but it's kind of like a belt around the waist. Yeah, exactly. And so but I wanted something that stood out because the rest of my dress was fairly simple and straightforward. And so I went on Etsy and I found it. It's kind of like that thing, it when you see it. I didn't know exactly what I wanted, but I knew I would know it when I saw it. And I sure did. And it was $200 for a sash. That didn't include shipping and handling. It was a lot of money. But you know what? I still have it. My husband calls it my championship belt.
Because it looks like one?
It kind of looks like
in
one.
Wrestling?
But it's only like 2.5 to 3 inches wide. It's not like a full like
a foot.
7 to like a foot.
Like huge.
But I actually like that name for it. It makes me laugh, but I just love it. And I don't know when I'm probably never gonna use it again.
It's a decorative piece.
Yeah, it's definitely a memory too. What about you, Shelly? Did you have any one item that you splurged on?
One might argue that my entire wedding was a splurge.
Why do you say that?
I guess it depends who you're asking, though, because I definitely know of other way more splurgy weddings in general.
Yeah.
But I would say, so if I had to think, what did I splurge on for my wedding that I wouldn't, like a thing I wouldn't necessarily have spent money on?
Yes.
So I did have a string quartet that I did not really get to hear because that was for our guests in the beginning of the wedding before it started. So I don't even know if they're good or not, but people said it was good. So I'm like,
good.
Okay, cool. And the other thing that I don't know why I felt like I really needed to find this correctly. I don't even know if that makes sense, but I will say my invitations. So I know that there's a lot of like really great invitation companies online now that you could get like fairly affordable invitations. Yeah. I felt like I needed custom invitations.
Why?
I wanted layered paper, like numerous layers of paper and like a certain color, a certain font, a kind of certain feel. So because my background is Japanese, like I didn't want a full-on like Oriental feeling wedding, which is totally fine for people who do, you know what I mean? But I did want some elements to be in there, but just not like in your face, straight up like Japanesey feeling. So it's hard to find cherry blossom type designs on a general website that makes invitations. That's probably not something that they do. Maybe they do it now, but not something that they were doing at the time. So I did find a local invitation. I don't know what you would call it. Stationery company, I guess, where she does a lot of cherry blossom stuff. So she designed my invitation. So I got it made custom. And I did kind of want like certain colors, and like one of the layers I wanted it all sparkly. So I had like a 3-layered invitation. But yeah, I liked it. I liked how it turned out.
That's good.
That's the main thing.
Honestly, when I was thinking about this question and how you would answer it, I thought for sure you were going to say your shoes.
Well, see, I don't consider, I did splurge on, generally speaking, I did splurge on my shoes, but
That's something you would normally splurge on,
yeah,
right?
exactly. That's
so you
why
didn't consider that as splurge. I
was
see.
like, I was expecting to, you know. So
and others
that's
were
not-
expecting that of you.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
So what's something, Tempsy, that you felt like that you didn't need to spend as much money on, since, like, let's go on the opposite here.
Sure. So for me, and I think this is a little bit naive looking back, but I decided not to hire a DJ or an MC or anything of that nature because I was like, I have iTunes. I have a lot of songs on my iTunes, and a lot of these songs are songs that I would want to play at my wedding. So I figured, you know what? I'll just put it on shuffle. It'll be fine. There's a couple different songs that I was going to have my brother just play like during the cake cutting part or during the, you know, the entry and things like that. And then I had a friend MC it. So I was like, okay, that's good enough. But for some reason, I guess all of the songs had to be check marked and they weren't checked. I've never seen
Like
this
on the computer
I never,
or whatever.
Yeah, I've never recognized this on iTunes and never had an issue with it before. My songs were all always checked. So I didn't think it would be an issue because I didn't know that that was even a possibility. They were all unchecked except for like 3 songs. So for the first hour and a half, it was like only 3
songs on rotate?
I don't know if it was just 3. I just know
a
that
few.
there was a few songs that repeated themselves quite a bit. And that to me was devastating only because, and I didn't cry about it, I'm just saying it was like, it broke my heart only because my husband and I had spent so much time picking these songs that were really nostalgic, really important to us. We put a lot of thought into this playlist and we really wanted people to feel it throughout the night because everybody who's coming to your wedding is about the same age and has the same nostalgia songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it gives you
yeah.
that feel of back in the day when you were in high school or,
yeah.
you know, whatever the case might be. And we really wanted that feeling, but we kind of missed out on that for the, you know, you're not there for the first hour while people are like, I guess it's cocktail hour where you're taking pictures and stuff like that. So things were just repeating and it was just like, oh man.
I didn't notice, by the way.
Okay,
so.
good. But another friend of ours did because there was a song that was very sentimental to them that kept playing.
Oh, they're like,
and so
"Why do I
that's
keep
how I
hearing this
found out
again?" Yeah.
about it. And so I felt bad for that person, but I was like also, you know, we had a lot of intent behind the songs that we chose. So I was hoping that that would be. So I would recommend, just because you don't want to have to worry about that. You know, we're talking about wedding coordinators. We're talking about people who support you throughout this big process. Like, you don't want to have to be worrying about those things while you're trying to enjoy the night. So I feel like, you know, I probably would have splurged a little bit on a DJ who had an MC. But I will say the MC, my friend that did it for us, he did an amazing job with very little direction. I just gave him a sheet of paper who, you know, this is who you introduce at the beginning and the middle and the end, whatever it is. But between that, just be fun, happy, you know, respectful, but you can have fun with it. He was like a nice, fun guy, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think he did a good job on it too.
Yeah, I think so.
feel like, did he have experience in that kind of stuff? I feel like he might have.
Yeah, he did. And he was a very outgoing person. He's a performer, you know, he plays ukulele, he sings, you know, so I think you're right. He did have a little bit of experience in that in the past, but I gave very little direction. So I was just like, you know what, at this point, I just got to cross my fingers and hope for the best. So what about you? Is there anything that you feel like you didn't spend as much on?
Yes. So for me, it was the cake. And what surprised me about that is because prior to, and not leading up, but prior to maybe like a few years before or whatever, just here and there, I'd watch a lot of Food Network stuff and cooking and baking. And I thought all these cakes that, you know, I see on TV looked really cool. And oh my gosh, there's so many options and so many things you can do. And oh my gosh, they make so nice ones, blah, blah, blah. But when it came down to it, I got a free cake from the hotel I had my wedding at, and I was like, I will take that free cake. And honestly, I mean, they had good flavor options. So I had a lilikoi cake that was 3-tiered, and I could pick between circular, like round or square. So I chose square.
Sure.
And then I just had the florist give me some extra flowers that somebody stabbed into my cake. in
Nice.
whatever arrangement I specified. So that was fine with me. The flowers covered the whole cake anyway. So not the whole cake, but a lot of it anyway. It looked nice. So
That's good.
I just went with the free cake instead of, it was going to come with it anyway. So
Yeah. We didn't spend too much on our cake either, but we didn't go with the hotel cake. I don't even know if they offered it, but they had a whole dessert layout with the price that we paid for the meal. And so when we were talking to our cake person, we decided to go for a more simple look. And then add flowers when she brought it. But we wanted the flavor to be really good. But we got a really small cake because we knew people were going to fill up on the
Right.
desserts on the
Yes.
table.
Yes. And that was another thing that I learned about too during the wedding planning process. And the reason why I decided to go with the free cake anyway is because while I was talking, with the catering, like that department at
Yeah.
the hotel I had my wedding at, they were mentioning that they provide so many desserts that by the time you get to serving the cake, nobody eats it. And then they charge a cake cutting fee and like serving it. It was like $1 or $2 per slice. And I had 220 people at my wedding. I was like, we're not serving that cake. They're just eating dessert. Give me the whole thing and I'm going to take it all home.
But did you save it, like that tradition of saving it for a year?
I did save it. Nobody ate it. We threw it away. But at least I got to taste it. It was good. I like lilikoi. That's one of my favorite fruity flavors.
Yeah,
so.
we had we chose every layer because we tasted every single flavoring that they offered, and we were very specific. We had like Oreo flavor on one layer, lilikoi on another, and I can't remember the other one, but we were very realistic. We're like, we are not going to eat. Is this going to be good in a year? Right. I don't think so. Yeah. So we just, the flavor, it's not just the flavor, but the texture wouldn't be.
It would be dry and hard, basically. Yeah.
So I didn't even keep it. I was like, no way.
I gave it, so they cut it up because it was a 3-layered cake. I cut it up into pieces, not little pieces, but like big chunks. And I gave it to like my bridal party, for their families, and then, relatives and that kind of stuff. So I wasn't going to waste. I mean, because I took the whole thing home.
Right.
But we did like hand it out to family and friends and stuff. So other people got to enjoy that lilikoi cake, but not every single guest. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. So have you gone to any weddings recently where they had some interesting stuff that was out of the box that you might be able to?
Definitely. Actually, I think it was maybe about now, by the time this podcast goes up, I think it would have been about a couple of months.
Sure.
Since I went to this wedding. It was very different and very 2019 appropriate. I feel like, current. The wedding was in a garden. I knew that this garden exists. I just didn't know where it was on the island. And I also didn't know that you could have events there. But it's so funny because I've learned since that there are a couple of other weddings that had happened there for people that I kind of know. So the things that I thought was really cool about this wedding is that this particular garden, it's not just like flowers and trees and that kind of stuff, but they actually grow produce like lettuce, and they had succulents. So there was a little shop up front where you could buy flowers and stuff, probably some produce too. But the centerpieces were lettuce, and I was waiting for them to give away that centerpiece so I could like go home and make a salad or something. But that time never came. But I thought that was very like, considerate, I guess you could say, considerate to like the environment. I mean, I killed a lot of flowers that day. Like, let's be real. If my today self was planning a wedding, I'm not sure I would have done that. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. There are a lot of eco-friendly elements like wooden utensils. And instead of throwing like rice or flower petals, they threw dried lavender. So that was really neat.
Oh,
too.
Yeah, I remember that when you told me that. I was like, that's so nice.
It was really nice. So, it was just unique and very, I feel like 2019, So
the lettuce centerpieces, I don't know. I just think of lettuce in a grocery store. But from what you showed me in pictures, it was very organic and ornate looking. Like it wasn't. It wasn't,
I had to look twice. I was like, oh, wait, that's lettuce, Yeah.
Because it was like the darker leaves. Was there like purple leaves too?
There's purple leaves and also green. And these were like huge heads of lettuce. Like they got like the really nice looking ones. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
I like that.
Yeah. What about you? Have you been to any cool weddings recently?
Yeah, actually, I like to eat. So when I see cool things like a s'mores bar or something interactive like that, I'm all about it. I have seen that lately. Also, I like when weddings are considerate if they do allow children to come. right? Like not everybody allows children to go to their weddings, but if you do, like have something for the kids to do. I probably wouldn't be as much of an advocate about this before having a kid, but now kids, they do not sit still very long. So the fact that they had like a little kiddie fun box for each of the kids was really nice, so that they could kind of stay occupied during the program. That was really good. And then after, they had these light up toys, because it turns kind of into a dark dancing party, right? So these lights that lit up.
Oh, that's fun.
Like foam wands or something like that, and they kind of lit up, and the kids were all on the dance floor having fun. So then the parents came on in the dance floor, and then all of the families came. Like it brought everybody on the floor because the kids were having so much fun. So I really liked that. I like things that really cater to the audience, because sometimes it can get a little bit, drab if you don't keep them engaged.
Truthfully, though, like as the couple who's planning the wedding, and if you were to have kids there, aren't you trying to avoid them from crying during your ceremony or like making a noise during dinner? So why not treat them and occupy them, distract them, so that, you can still have the night that you were hoping for anyway, right?
Yep, exactly. If you had a chance to go back, is there something you wish you would have done differently?
That's a good question. I'm actually not sure. I mean, generally speaking, there are things. I just don't know what I would replace them with, though. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, I could have done that differently, but how would I have done it differently? I'm not really sure. I kind of think, well, one thing I wish I maybe had done or looked into a little bit more was, I did like my flower arrangements, but I guess I wish it was just a little bit more interesting. Like, I thought it was kind of off the shelf ish, the arrangements that I had. I mean, they were still nice. I did like them. But the florist that I ended up with was my second choice, I guess. The person who I initially had wanted to go with had another event going on the same day, so she wasn't available. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But otherwise, I mean, I think the other thing that maybe I don't know if this is considered like doing something different. The thing that I had the hardest time with, and I knew this going into it, was picking a dress. Like, I knew I was going to have a hard time finding a dress that I actually liked. And I did end up with a dress that I liked, but I feel like there's probably another one out there somewhere that I would have liked more, I guess I would say. So there was one I initially tried on. So I tried on a lot of dresses, maybe like 20 or 30 dresses. It was like a lot.
Wow.
And I didn't like most of them. I know a lot of other people liked a lot of the dresses that I tried. They're like, oh, it looks nice. I think Tempty was like, oh, I really like that one. I was like, I kind of like it too, but I don't like it enough to buy it for like over $1,000, you know? But the day, I remember I went to this bridal shop that is known to be a little bit more on the expensive side here. And I tried on a dress and I was like, we're finally going down the right path of things that I like. And I was like, oh shoot, am I going to have to spend like $3,000 on a dress that I actually want?
Right.
Because it's heading in that direction. Luckily I didn't. I mean, it didn't come down to that. Thank goodness. That's too much for me for just a day.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I don't know. Maybe I wish I went to another state or city to go wedding dress shopping.
Ooh, you could go and say yes to the dress.
Yeah, like one of those kinds of stores. Only though that store is like $20,000 dresses and stuff. But, initially what I had wanted to do was like go to LA and like go to some bridal shops there, because I feel like they might have had stuff that I felt was more my style, I guess. But I mean, that's also an expensive trip to buy something expensive.
Yeah, but at least you get an experience out of it. Yeah. Not just, I wouldn't contribute that to the price of the dress necessarily, but I think I only tried on 3 dresses. It was a very small amount, and then I knew that was my dress. However, I was like thinking to myself, I only tried on 3 dresses. Like, is that weird? Should I just kind of, that was what was going on in my mind. So I actually went to one more shop after that. Just in case, yeah. And I tried on a few more, and I was like, nope, I'm sure that one is my dress. So I'm glad I did that, but I was just like, I feel like people try on more than just 3 or 4 dresses, but luckily.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would say like one of the reasons why I picked my dress is because it was still pretty simple. And a part of me did kind of want a little bit of like sparkle going on in the dress without any sort of crystals or anything like that. So it actually had mini sequins as an underlay to the dress. So technically my entire dress could have sort of sparkled if the lighting hit it right, but it wasn't like a disco ball or anything like that.
Nobody wants that. For me, other than like the DJ, music, entertainment type of thing, I feel like I kind of got caught up in the stress of the day, no coordinator, this, that, and the other. And so I didn't allow myself to feel as much of the emotion of the day. That's kind of the only thing. Like if I could go back, I'd prefer to just kind of be able to be present and really feel what was happening. I was marrying my husband. Like this is my life partner, the person I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. I want to feel what's happening here. And I just don't feel like I got to experience the full emotion of it. So, and I kind of do that to myself. I keep myself busy to not, emotions suck sometimes. So I just rather not feel it. But you have to feel it, the good, the bad, the ugly. You have to, it's what builds your life. It's what builds character. So I think if I really, if I had to go through it again, which I really would never go through that again because it was a lot of work. But if I did, then I would just really try to be a little more present. What about things that you appreciate at other weddings? Thoughtfulness or, I don't know, other things that they might do that you might appreciate as a guest?
So one thing that I would say I would appreciate as a guest, and like for people planning weddings, maybe consider this as you're planning, not trying to but something to keep in mind is I appreciate when whoever is getting married, when I'm attending as a guest, that they are also considering that, their guests should feel comfortable, maybe not baking out in the sun or anything like that, or like getting sunburned or frying or almost fainting. Those things have never happened to me, but I appreciate when, I don't have to deal with those conditions, but also making sure that, your guests can enjoy themselves, enjoy the food that you paid so much money to feed them. There have been a couple of weddings that I've been to where maybe the lighting is a little bit dark. I don't know if it's like mood lighting intent or whatever, but make sure your guests can see where they're walking. They're not going to trip over anything
or what they're eating.
They can see what they're eating and not like missing their face and like dropping food all over themselves. So those are some things, because sometimes, it can be really challenging, I think, with outdoor weddings when you may not have all of the conveniences of like switching on some lights and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, lots of things to consider, I feel like, if you're having an outdoor wedding for sure. But what about you, Tempsy? What are some things that you appreciate as a guest?
For me, I wanted to make sure that my ceremony wasn't extremely long because it was outside. So as a guest, if I kind of put myself in my guest shoes to be like, how long do I want to be sitting outside? Hawaii's hot and humid. Let's keep it to 15, 20, max 30 minutes. But again, I'm also one of those people who isn't super fond of emotions, so that might have played into it a little bit. Also, for cocktail hour, that's kind of the time where the couple goes out to take pictures because it's usually sunset time. It's the perfect lighting to get pictures. Make sure you have something for your guests to do, whether, for sure food. Cocktail hour should include some sort of appetizer, pupus, tapas, whatever you call it. It should have a little bit of food for them to enjoy because it's dinner time. They're probably getting a little hungry. If you are allowing alcohol, a little bit of alcohol to loosen up so that they end up getting on the dance floor. And then the slideshow. I think that's a really good time to play the slideshow because they can kind of keep their attention to something.
Yeah.
But don't take too long taking pictures. People want to see you. They want to enjoy the time with you and they want to be around you. And so if you take 2 hours to take pictures and your guests are sitting around for 2 hours, they're not going to start dinner without you.
Right.
So they're going to be waiting for 2 hours for you to come back. I would say, be as considerate as possible while still getting the best photos possible. I think I've been to a couple of weddings lately where they've gone above and beyond, where they were extremely thoughtful. One wedding I went to, I think their niece it was her birthday. Their wedding day was her birthday. They had a special cake made and had everybody in the party in the entire room sing happy birthday to their niece. It was so incredibly sweet. I really, really love that. The other thing that they did was they brought individuals up that kind of helped with the wedding or have contributed to their relationship, like supporting them in different ways, have just always been there for them by bringing them up and saying thank you in front. And they actually had them get involved in a couple of their games, whether they liked it or not. I don't know how much guests would appreciate that, but it was sure entertaining for the rest of us. So I really like that part too. And they also thank people who helped in the small ways. So I was at the guest table helping out, and they said thank you. And I didn't do much. I was only there for a little bit, but they said thank you in front of their entire party of people. So that was super nice and thoughtful. And I just think that's going above and beyond to consider other folks who might be having a birthday on that day, or just thanking your grandparents or your parents and all that good stuff. I know that's kind of common sense, but I think doing it in a meaningful and special way is important.
So tell us about some of your wedding experiences, whether you've been a guest or planned your own wedding. What are some tips and tricks that you've learned along the way during the whole planning process? Or what are some fails or successes during your wedding planning process?
Stressors. Things that you can look back on now and giggle.
And laugh.
Yeah.
Right.
If it's still a little bit touchy for you, don't worry about it. But
it's okay.
We'd still love to hear about what happened with your wedding. Well, that's it for us. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Outright Effect. You can find us at www.theoutrighteffect.com, on social media at The Outright Effect on Instagram and Facebook, or email us at theoutrighteffect@gmail.com. See you guys next time.
Bye.